Hey, well, welcome back to another edition of Real Intelligence. I know I haven't been here in a minute, but trust me, I've been here, but I've been doing a lot of other things. But we aren't stopping with this series because it's so important for us to understand what's up here. And man, I tell you, there are, and I'm going to be actually doing a video on this soon. I mean, just lately there were two, let's say, self deletions, of individuals that came across my timeline just very recently of people who just completely crashed out. And, that's very sad, but this is an ongoing thing. And you may not be at that extreme place, but there's all types of degrees of people who deal with areas such as depression or just general things where you're just having a hard time figuring things out, right? And so, but what do you use to figure things out? Your pinky? No. Your toe? No. You use your brain. And a lot of us, we just don't know all the functionalities of our brain. And it's important for us to understand this. I say this with every episode, is that when we look at all the things that we've learned in school, all the things they taught us, one of the things they really didn't spend a whole lot of time on is our brain function. I mean, this is something that you would think we should notice, right? This should be very on the top of the list. We interact, as I say all the time, we interact with computers all the time, devices all the time that have all different, you got to make sure you keep it updated. You got to make sure you add this memory and all of this other stuff, right? Well, these devices, again, what they're doing is actually modeled after this. So instead of depending on artificial intelligence, we should be relying on our real intelligence. So that's hence the name of the series, Real Intelligence. So we're going to continue to explore all these different, just in a very simple way, but enough to get you to kind of to take more interest in what's up here instead of just waking up and going through the motions and eating and then going back to sleep and doing it all over again the next day. Let's begin to understand so that we can optimize this. And then in turn, we can have an optimized life. So let's go ahead and get into it. So today we are going to be learning about the occipital lobe, and which is also known as the camera. Now, the occipital lobe is basically a part of your brain, and I'll have graphics up on the screen too as well, so you can follow along. The occipital lobe is basically the part of your brain that takes what you see through your input devices up here. In this case, we're talking about your eyes. And what it's doing is taking that information. In the back of your brain, you have this lobe. And what it does is basically takes that information and it interprets it, right? And makes all kinds of observations and all of that, and then it pushes that data, that information, to other parts of your brain, so you know what you're looking at. You know what I'm saying? So, and this whole process goes by so fast. We don't. It's not in the forefront of our mind. We don't think about it, but yeah. So in the back of your head here, it's important. You know how you ever hear these stories of people actually getting whacked on the side of their head or a certain part of their head, and they either go blind or maybe they just lose their orientation, or you show them something and they're like, I don't know what it is. Isn't this fascinating? I mean, it's crazy for something like that to happen, but it is fascinating too, because you hit that one part of your brain. Doctors typically know, you must have hit this certain lobe here that is whose responsibility is to interpret what you're seeing. So that's how they know where to go when they're doing brain surgery and all that. So let's go ahead and get into it. So what I wanted to introduce to you now is a young lady. Well, she's an AI young lady, but let's read her backstory. Okay, her name is Tasha. She is a graphic designer who loves sunset walks in Phoenix. Well, she's not too far from here, but feels her eyes tire quickly at work. She tweaks 3 habits for 2 weeks, sets her phone to the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, pay attention, this is going to be on the quiz. Every 20 minutes, she looks 20 feet away for 20 seconds. All right. That's what she does. The 20-20-20 rule. We're learning all of this together. Swaps her afternoon soda. Well, you shouldn't be drinking soda anyway. For a carrot kale citrus shot. And places a golden pothos. Okay, what are we getting into? The Greek mythology here? Well, you're going to find out in a moment. Besides her monitor, by end of week two, color matching takes fewer retires and evening eye strain fades. Why? Her occipital circuits got steadier input, less screen glare, more distance focus, better fuel, lutein, zeaxanthin. We're going to talk about that too. All right, I ain't just reading this. We're going to talk about it. And beta carotene and cleaner indoor air. Small upgrades that add up for melanated bodies living in dry, bright climates. So in her case, yeah, this is a huge plus. But if you've been following us on this platform, we've been talking about, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're in a house for a good part of the day, you know, you got your HVAC situation going on, you know, if you got either your heat running or your AC running or whatever. But these devices, they actually take moisture out of the air. And it's not only not good for your lungs and your whole breathing situation, but it's also not good for your eyes either. And going back to the videos we've done in the past, we told you the importance of having a humidifier. All right. So it's very important. If you're going to be indoors for a good part of the day, make sure you have a humidifier. And not just if you live in a climate like I live in, but just regardless, period. It's imperative for you, especially for those of us that have a lot of melanin in our skin. So, yeah. So we're going to talk. So, yeah. So just make sure you have that. So she's squared away. Now, how can we get our situation right? Like Tasha. All right, so let's get into that. Okay, so let's learn a few. We're going to take a snapshot of the brain here, the part of the brain that we're going to be talking about. Okay, so I got a graphic up right now for you. We're going to follow along. So here we go. So we got the primary visual cortex. This is the first stop for vision, edges, contrast, orientation. Next, we got the visual association areas. And that what that does, it builds shapes, textures, and color maps. See, you ain't think your brain had all this in there. See, you thinking Photoshop and I need this, I need this software to do this and that or whatever. We're not thinking that all of this stuff is right in our heads, but we don't really think all of this stuff. We gotta be familiar with all of this. Next, we have the dorsal stream. This is the where and how path, location, motion, hand-eye guidance. And then finally, we got the ventral stream. This is the what path, object and face identity. All right, so this is a whole brain note here. So let me give you this. So seeing is a team sport, as we just read here. Occipital data flows forward to the parietal lobe for spatial action and to the temporal lobe for recognition. Okay, so you see how that works. So anyway, let's move on here. And then we're going to go through that again, just a little bit. We're going to take a deeper dive here and just go through that, what I just explained to you again. Here we go. How does it work? All right. So first thing, we got pixels to patterns. Photoreceptors in your retina, and these rods and cones, send signals through the optic nerve to V1. That's that V1 section, which sketches edges and contrast. Think black and white outlines. Okay. The next thing is the what versus where. Association areas route information into two highways. The ventral stream, which identifies what you see, and the dorsal stream. All right. It tracks where and how it moves so that you can reach, catch, or dodge. All right. That's the what versus where. That's part, right? And then finally, we got the climate and care. All right. This is the part that probably a lot of people really don't pay too much attention to this, but we need to pay attention to this. Dry air plus long screen time equals faster tear evaporation, and tired focus. Hydration, indoor humidity, early morning sunlight for circulation rhythm, and blue light management help keep the camera crisp. Now, I'm going to tell you, from time to time, I deal with this. Sometimes your eyes start itching, you start itching and it's like, oh God, I can't keep rubbing this eye, but it's itching. Well, it's because you're in a climate and you're in the house and it's dry. And that can have an impact on your vision, but it's not just that. It's not just the dryness. There's a couple of other things too. All right, we're going to talk about that. Okay. All right, so here's our word bank. All right, let's go to the bank. Word bank. Occipital. What's occipital? That's the vision lobe at the back of your brain. So your eyes up in the front, your input devices, but all the camera work, that camera equipment, the main part of it is back here. But then you also got stuff on the side too. But the main part is back here. All right. Your occipital. Okay. So now you got the fovea. The fovea. The fovea is the retina sharp focus center. All right. Next thing is lutein. Lutein. That's the yellow plant pigment that protects the eye. Well, where are we getting plants from? We're going to talk about that. All right. We're going to talk about that because plants also play a significant role in brain health. Okay, that's what we've been emphasizing. Now you got zeaxanthin. Zeaxanthin. What is that? That's a partner pigment that supports the macula. The macula. All right. So, again, you're dealing with your vision. And then finally, we got the dorsal ventral streams. That's the how and the where path and what path to vision. All right. All right. So let's move on to the next part here. Okay. So we're bringing all of this together. Now we get into food part. And here we go. We got the carrot kale citrus shot. Okay. And we're going to make us a smoothie. All right. And why do we need carrot, kale, and citrus all mixed in together? All right. So what's carrot good for? Beta carotene. Okay. That's vitamin A, which is very good for your vision. It supports low light vision. So beta carotene, carrot, get your carrot in. I'm telling myself that too. Get your carrot in. You go to the grocery store, they have, regular carrots, but they also have those juicing carrots, so, just make sure, try to get organic at the end of the day, as much as you can. Whenever we're talking about herbs or fruits or vegetables, make sure you try to go organic. And yes, I am aware that, Bill Gates and the gang, they're, reclassifying things and extending definitions and all this other stuff. But, just stay on top of that as much as you can. And certainly we'll do our best to kind of keep you in the loop here as we discover things as well. But as a general rule of thumb, just make sure you stick with organic as much as possible. Kale and spinach. This is where that lutein and that zeaxanthin it comes in. All right. And what is that good for? Okay. What it's good for is it's a concentrate that's in it. In the macula and filter high energy light. It's very good. It's a orange yellow. It's like a yellowish color. So you're going to get that from those two things that I just mentioned there. All right. And inside has things in there that's going to help with your vision. All right. Okay. And of course, citrus is good. Okay. And that's good for eye surface and, your vessel health. Okay. Very good for that. So anyway, blend this together and you got yourself a great smoothie that you should, if you, want to keep that eye health going, this is a good thing to use, to incorporate. 1/2 cup of carrot juice, 1/2 cup of water, 1/2 cup of kale. And they say squeeze of lemon or orange and blend to sip. All right. So I may try that, so if you've tried that before, let me know in the comments. All right. All right. Now plants, great plants to have. In the last weeks, we've been talking about the last episodes we've talked about spider plants. We've talked about aloe plants. We talked about snake plants. And I think there was another one we talked about. Well, this week we're going to talk about the golden pothos. The golden pothos, and you got this on the screen and what it looks like. The golden pothos is a tough air purifying vine. So this is a vine plant that reduces VOCs. Now, what are VOCs? What are VOCs? VOCs is volatile organic compounds. So yeah, so when you're in a dry climate, you're going to have stuff kind of flying in the air, like we call it dust, but yeah, it's, but these are organic compounds that are flying in the air, and they're making targets. It's like everything try to get to your eye. And so you want to make sure that, if you can, just put your plants near where you're going to be working, like your computer, make sure you have some, because another thing that plant is good for is releasing that moisture in the air. Right. Remember, we talked about that and how important that is. So look this plan up, and, if it's something that works for you, man, get it. Either way, you should have a lot of plants in your house. Sometimes it can be hard to maintain and all of that. I get it. But make sure you put some green. Don't just have computers and, a bunch of electronics and all of that. You need to put some life in your house. OK, it's going to definitely make a difference. OK, so let's go here. Now we got some challenges that you should try to incorporate on a daily basis or a weekly basis. OK, so one of the things you can do is a color spot walk. Right. And what is that? Spend 10 minutes outdoors naming 5 new colors or shades every day. So as you're going out and you're walking about, take some sun. So this is going to encourage you to slow it down. For me, I'm mission mode. So, I like sometimes when I see a lot of flowers, like when we go through our flowering season, I love seeing these purple desert plants because they just be all over the place, and I take note of that. But also, as you're walking, especially, in the cool of the day, try to see if you can find some other colors, just challenge yourself with that. And that information is going to come all up in this photo part of your brain and all of that. And again, it gives your brain something to process and to work and to label. What we talked about, you always want to keep your brain sharp by challenging it. If you're just going to use your brain just to go through day in and day out doing routine work, your brain isn't going to be developed. It's just going to be there to just maintain stuff. So, yeah, so you want to do that. Next thing, of course, we talked about the 2020 rule, sorry. And then you want to set a reminder to do that when you're on your phone or you're on your computer. You want to just every 20 minutes, you want to look 20 feet away for 20 seconds. All right. And so you want to do that. I know that's hard sometimes. You want to do that not as rapidly as I'm showing you right now, but you want to definitely do that. Contrast hunt. At sunrise or sunset, gently track a moving target, bird or car for 60 seconds. Train the dorsal stream. Have you guys ever done that? Now, this is called a contrast hunt. They're putting a name to it and all of that, but all of us at some point, I'm sure, when you go outside and, if you see a bird or you see a plane or whatever, and then you just look at it. Well, that's good, too, because another thing you can focus on is not just moving objects, but maybe objects that are steady, that aren't moving, like mountains. Like out here, we have mountains. So I love looking at mountains. So get into the habit of looking at things from afar off, all right? Because what's happening in this world that we live in right now, because so many people now are looking at things up close on your phone, what's happening is it's increasing the amount of nearsightedness that's out there. Everybody, your eyes are trained to look at things, close, but you're not, when it comes to looking at things far, it becomes a little bit challenging. So this is where you exercise your eyes and your whole vision system to begin to know how to, the things that are far away, that's important too. So get in the habit of doing that. And if they're moving, that's just an added bonus because, again, that just adds more exercise to the muscles in your eye and all of that stuff, right? Next thing is blink sets. Do 10 slow, full blink sets before long reads. Recoats the eye surface in dry climate. So 10 times. I'm not going to go through it here, but just if you're going to be if you're going to be reading, especially on your computer, you want to make sure that you're getting a lot of blinks in. All right. You want to make sure you're doing that. And then room tune up. Position screens perpendicular to windows. Use warm tone night mode after sunset. Oh, this is a challenge for me. Whatever device you're using nowadays, they have that warm tone mode that you can switch it to, not just the, because you have the standard blue light situation going on. I don't know if you can kind of see on my phone here, but, well, I got blue on my background anyway, but, it's a bluish tone. But that's not really good for our vision. It really isn't. So especially at night, what you want to do is turn it to a warm tone, because what that does, it actually sends signals to your brain that, okay, it's time to shut down. This is why, back in the day, people with one of the benefits of having candlelight, it had that same kind of wavelength. It's nothing like having a candle. You're in a room, a darkened room, and it has that candlelight. It doesn't really lend itself to you getting up like, okay, I got to work. No. Usually when you see the warm glow of a candle, it just relaxes you, don't it? Versus you going into a department store or retail store and they got those bright LED lights. I don't know how those people do it, but yeah, there's some stores. My wife, she's like, I'm sorry, I can't even go in here. It's too bright, So yeah, so in the evening, switch it up a little bit. I was saying the reason why it's a challenge for me is because when I'm working with graphics, it's important for me to see the real color. So that can be a bit of a challenge for me, but when I can do it, I definitely make sure I do. If anything, I just turn the intensity down. That's typically what I do. So baby steps, but I'm getting there. Okay, so that's what you do. All right, so there we go. So anyway, so now it's quiz time. All right, it's quiz time, and we're going to get up out of here. But I'm not going to get you out of here until we take this test, okay? I told you at the end of all of our sessions, we're going to make sure we have a quiz. So let's go ahead and go. V1 mainly detects A, meaning, B, edges and contrast, or C, emotions. All right, let's move on to the next one. The ventral stream is the what-where pathway. The ventral stream is the what-where pathway. All right, next is name two pigments that protect the macula. Name two pigments that protect the macula. Number 4, what does the 20-20-20 rule do for your visual system? Okay, and then finally, number 5, why might a pothos plant help your workstation vision comfort? Okay, so there you go. There it is right there. So as you guys are getting through this, just document it. Let us know in the comments how you're doing with all of this and, what exactly has stood out to you. What was the one thing that really stood out to you in this particular lesson? So, yeah, so we're going to keep right on going until we cover all of this. So that's it. That's all we have. Thank you so much for tuning in for our class time of Real Intelligence. You guys take care, and I'll see you again soon.